planning on changing the world just like me. You could be the chairwoman and I'll be the trustee. Let me give all to your benefit. Then I'll get blessed out my deficit.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Tangiel Johnson, and I am your host with Your Corporate IQ.
And I'm your co-host, Lachez Solage.
Lachez, here we are again.
Yes.
Super excited. We have some awesome guests with us today. So before we start, I want to give our standard disclaimer, which basically says the views expressed by Your Corporate IQ and our guests today are our own views, and they are not reflective of any company or organization. Okay, and so with that said, I want to go ahead and thank all of our listeners today for tuning in to Your Corporate IQ podcast, where we discuss the pearls and the perils of corporate America with a lens for people of color and their personal experience. Today's segment is on overcoming obstacles, pitfalls, and microaggressions. Ooh, this should be interesting. And our award-winning special guests are both Keith and Iris Archuleta. They are the co-founders of Emerald HPC International LLC, which was founded in 1992 to improve the lives of people, creating healthy organizations, and building sustainable communities. Welcome, Keith and Iris.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. Hey, I don't have my pearls, but I got my girls, so we're ready to go.
Oh, no, you didn't.
And she is a pearl indeed.
Should have known he had something up his sleeve. I should have known it.
Yes.
Yeah, we are so excited and just really interested in hearing about all the great work that you're doing. And so let's jump right into it. You guys ready?
Sure are.
All right. So tell us about Emerald HPC International and what you've been recognized for.
You want me to start? So Emerald HPC International is a company that we started back in 1992. It actually started as a sole proprietorship, Emerald Consulting. And the focus was around this idea of whole people, healthy organizations, and sustainable communities. We wanted to be a different type of consulting company in that we were really going to be working on transformation, on personal transformation, organizational health and transformation, and building community, building the beloved community that Martin Luther King and others have talked about, especially in this democracy that has a lot of cracks in the foundation that we know need to be repaired so that we can be a house united and not a house divided. So we've been working on a number of issues over the years. We became an LLC in 2012, where we became Emerald HPC International. That reflected the fact that we've been doing international work. We continue to do international work here in the United States and overseas. And we built a whole theme out of a procedure or a process that Iris actually helped us to get trademarked. And it's very rare to have a company have its consulting and training process trademarked. It's called the High Performing Communities Framework. And Iris is a lawyer, skilled lawyer, and she's put all her skills, most of her skills around the law field into our company. And so we've been doing consulting around strategic planning. We've built community organizations. We've built initiatives that we've created on our own, as well as been partners with foundations, government institutions, and corporations that are trying to make a change. Now, what do we mean by that? It could be youth engagement, youth in Antioch who are dealing with being in trouble in school, not graduating. So we created the Youth Intervention Network. We're doing work with a community health fund in 3 or 4 areas of community health with BIPOC owned or not owned but led nonprofits. So we worked overseas with peace and reconciliation efforts in Northern Ireland. We have done work with youth organizations as well internationally. And we're just really proud of that. So we've been recognized for our consulting. We've been recognized for our training. And Iris was recognized specifically for her work with the Youth Intervention Network. It was
Hmm.
recognized by The Hague in overseas with the UN, the opening of the Peace
Wow.
University around a peace process, the Youth Intervention Network, recognized by Eric Holder, our former Attorney General, for that work as well. So, and we've gotten local awards. We were just named the Business of the Year in Antioch, California,
Yeah.
last year. So we get recognized every now and then, but it's really not about the recognition. It's about the good work that we're blessed to do.
I just want to just add one little thing to that, though. I think the thing that makes me the proudest of having our process trademark, U.S. trademark, is because it should be impossible. First
Mm.
of all, there are hardly no there people don't get their processes trademarked. This is very, very
Right.
unusual. But the thing that's the most interesting to me about it is it's a process, the high performing communities framework, and it requires identifying issues, then applying the correct rules, then do the right analysis so that you come to a conclusion. There's something called IRAC. Now, the thing that made it almost impossible to think that we could have this trademarked is IRAC is every law student that ever gets a law degree, you have to learn IRAC. IRAC is
Hmm.
a process. And so to have that US trademarked, I mean,
Hmm.
literally, I could challenge my old law professors about using IRAC if I wanted to, but anyway, it's for a different purpose.
Right,
But
the
that's one way
trademark
to do it.
is
Yeah, it's
based on
trademark.
our innovation of that process.
Right,
Right.
in that process. So it's not the same as what we do. Well, you do have to do with IRAC in law school, but it is a different process. But
Yeah.
it was something that people thought was absolutely impossible. The fact that it's trademarked really honors, I think, a lot of the work that we've been blessed to be able to do. And
Wow.
because it's just been miraculous, even us being able to get connected with the types of folks and countries and work that we've been able to do, it's been a miracle. It's been a real blessing. It's amazing. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
don't try to make it seem like, oh, we're blessed.
And
Awesome.
the real
Wow.
power is that it's fact based in this time
Yes.
of made up facts and
Right.
untruths. It really focuses on facts. It focuses on outcomes. So even with nonprofits that we work with, government entities, companies, um, it's beyond that bottom line. I mean, companies have an outcome, which is to make money, but we actually help companies, organizations, and people get to the bottom line of improving the lives of people. So that's what we're really all about.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. I think it's a lot to unpack there. I mean, there's so many areas that you're involved in. And so I want to spend some time on that. I don't want to breeze past everything that you said because there's so much that you're doing in the community. I guess the first question I would have then is, how did all of that come about? I mean, did you start off with a vision to support all of those areas, or did over time you kind of went into this area and that area? What was the initial vision for the organization, and did that kind of grow into what it is today, and you kind of added and expanded areas? Really curious about this.
Yeah, it's funny. The work has grown to fill the vision. The vision really was to be able to look at transformation of those various types of interconnected entities in a community, companies, educational institutions, all the institutions that influence our public policy and influence the kind of the rules of the game, and that impact people's lives. And so the vision has always been pretty broad. We of course started, I got a master's in nonprofit organizational management, and I'd done a year at Stanford Business School as well. So I definitely had some skills in strategic planning and organizational development. So one of the things you learn when you start a company too is you start with a focus. You might want to do everything, but where do you start? So I
Right.
started coaching and consulting with nonprofits primarily, and then expanded that to government and educational institutions and corporations. So the core of what we do is really consulting, coaching, and training, typical kind of business. But we've grown as we've needed to. You start doing work in one area. We started off with an arts education contract in San Francisco. And another thing I think folks will relate to is when you start a company, you kind of know who you want your clients to be, but you also have to be smart when you get a client that you didn't anticipate. right? So
Okay.
we wanted clients to be this or this or that, but one of the first opportunities we had was to become the project manager as a consultant with something called the Arts Education Funders Collaborative in San Francisco, working
Hmm.
with all 37, what was it, 73 elementary schools and 37 child development centers to integrate
Wow.
arts education into the curriculum, because there was some
Wow.
best practices emerging around, first of all, the need for arts, but not just art for art's sake, that arts and culture is a great way to inspire and engage young people at an early
Yes.
age, and therefore teach math and history and
Hmm.
everything through that creativity angle. I learned a lot at the beginning around how math and music are really great uh, partners in terms of using music to teach math and math to teach music. And so, but even in history and culture, bringing in arts and visual arts and dance and all the things that are part of people's lives. And so we started there, and then I was telling Tanjil this the other day that we did reports every year with that contract. We're working with these funders collaborative and the Arts Commission, the school district. Great collaboration we put together, and I would do an annual report. And one day, I guess someone was reading our report in a board meeting of funders, and our report was one report was on the table still, and somebody from a big funder saw it and said, "Who did the report?" And so they told them it was us. And next thing you know, we're asked to do a Mayfair Improvement Initiative. It's an economic community development initiative in San Jose. So one thing has kind of led to the other. The key of it, though, is really, I'm going to just put it out there. It's the good Lord who gives us these opportunities. Um, we try to stay in tune, and we started the company actually as a ministry when I got saved back in 1992. Got to share
Wow.
that truth of our company. The company's purpose is to do good things and to reach people here outside the four walls of the church. The people who really need healing and help and change and all those kinds of things. So we've just been prayerful, and we don't need to advertise. I don't sound arrogant.
Yeah, we never did.
We may have a little marketing budget we were all supposed to have, but we don't really use it because one thing leads to another. And we've created initiatives. When we have that little bit of extra money left over, we have started our own initiatives because no one else is willing to be the funder of it or the client that's going to pay us. So we've just been prayerful, and we look for those opportunities to make a difference. We're almost like a foundation, who has certain
Hmm.
values, and therefore they look for organizations they can invest in. Well, we find those opportunities we can invest our time in, and we can help people come together to empower them to make a difference. And that's a key part of it as well. Would you say?
Yeah. And I would say when he talks about the miracles, just think about it. Think about the miracle. Okay. So we start this process and so we're doing something that's called the Youth Intervention Network. And that was something because, to be quite honest with you, young people getting in trouble and acting stupid and skipping school and hoping it was getting on my nerves. I talked to a friend of I talked to a friend of mine, Leslie and Keith, and said, you know what, we need to do something about this. So we came up with something called the Youth Intervention Network, where we decided, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to recruit volunteers, community volunteers. We're going to get them trained on how to engage and sit down and talk and work with these families, because we knew, had done a lot of research, and so we knew that a lot of it had to do with foundationally what was going on in the home, what was up with the parents and the whole bit. And I just remember we and so, not to take too much time, because it was a miracle, we had to we ended up having to find somebody to train volunteers, because I wanted all volunteers. And so, make a long story short, we get introduced to this guy in Northern Ireland with this organization called Dialogue for Peaceful Change, which is this global, well known. I mean, they knew the king and the queen and all the people.
Wow. Wow.
They're very well connected globally, Colin and those guys. And so we ended up getting introduced to them, and we had this meeting, and we told them what we were looking for. And Colin kind of went, okay, I hear you. Okay, well, if you do it, well, then this is what's going to happen.
Let's train the leaders
Let's
first.
train the leaders first. Yeah. And the leaders have to go through 40 consecutive hours of training, and they can't miss, and they got to get certified. And then when you recruit your volunteers, they're going to have to go through the 40 training. And we're like, Okay, he said, so think about it. Let me know. I'm going back to Northern Ireland. Call me when you know what you want to do. I'm like, okay. So then I almost got like,
Yeah.
like Letta and Keith, the different ones who work with me. It was like I was like, let's do it. They're like, is you what you mind? I'm like, no, we can do it.
Yeah.
No, let's
Let's
just
do it.
make a long story short. We ended up not only being able to do it, but how many over 300 volunteers?
Over 5 years, we had 300 community volunteers.
Yeah, and they had to go through
Wow.
40 consecutive hours
All
of
of them went through
training,
training.
and they had to get certified and the whole bit, and they had to work with those kids. And the number of kids that went from
Wow.
literally dropout to A's, from doing no aspiration to going on to college, and I mean like
No range.
some of the best colleges out there. Like really, it was a total miracle. But the blessing of that also was that we formed this relationship with Colin and those guys with Dialogue for Peaceful Change. I mean, we're like family now. We're brothers and sisters like family.
Wow.
So had a lot of work. Eric Holder, this is the work that Eric Holder recognized. The Youth Intervention
Wow.
Network, one of best practices in the country. We're also recognized as one of the best practices globally.
Yeah.
So, but that it was
Incredible.
yeah, and it was but it's one of those things where you know it's God because you cast the net. Look at over 300 people said, okay, we'll go through 40 consecutive hours of training, do exactly
Wow.
what you do, the whole bit, then go through a process of getting certified, and then take on a family, and we're going to be with that family for 3 to 6 months. We had people, literally people who were straight up racist, who were talking about, well, it's them people, it's black people and stuff like this. So we're going
Wow.
here just to prove, become some of my closest friends now. Totally
Wow. Incredible. It's
cry
incredible.
Yeah.
and so it was really. So I don't say anything about that, but
No,
but it just goes to show that God is in what we do because we couldn't do that.
Right. Well,
We could just do that.
it's funny too because when we try to explain in a corporate way what we do, right?
Right.
The way I describe Emerald is we help communities do what is impossible. We help communities solve problems together and to do things that they thought were impossible. And we are able to find resources that people didn't know were there. We bring people together
Right.
that they don't know about.
Right.
And let's talk about our partners in Northern Ireland. You know, we're African American. I'm also Latino. What is up with having partners who are from Northern Ireland, right? Who can relate to what we're doing? But
Right.
we have learned in our own lives the reality that there are common visions that people have all over the place. But
Right.
racism makes us think we're enemies with everybody.
Uh-huh.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And what did we have in common with these folks? Well, they had gone through 10 years of violence in Northern Ireland because of sectarian violence between Protestants and Catholics. Didn't have anything to do with
Yes.
race, but I could see that's the same thing that you might have here with race.
That's
Or in
right.
another,
That's
it
right.
might be a religion or it might be geography, whatever it is, it splits us apart. But they had a lot
Mhm.
of sensitivity to the things we were struggling with because, for example, when we talk about youth at that period, we were dealing with a rise in gang issues, a
Yeah.
rise in, and it wasn't. See, the thing is, the kids we worked
I
with.
can't see you, Keith.
Oh, sorry, the kids we
Yeah,
worked.
yeah.
They weren't the ones who were in the most trouble necessarily. They were right, the
Mhm.
ones on the edge. They weren't necessarily in gangs already, but they were being courted. They were being.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, there were some, but not.
No, and yeah, a lot of them were. But I'm just saying the average youth and the average family wasn't the stereotype.
Right.
See,
Okay.
where we lived, there were a lot of middle class, upper middle class people of color. But guess what? They were commuting to work, which is happening in a lot of places in our
Mm.
country when there's these areas of industry, and then you have they call it the suburbs, but it's really not. It's just small communities that can
Mhm.
afford the housing, but folks have
Mhm.
to commute 3 hours a day back and forth, especially in the Bay Area, right?
Yes.
Just work to work. So what we found was those youth, they didn't have any kind of support after 3 o'clock. And
Oh, wow. Interesting.
we worked with the police department, like the police chief and others who were able to help us because we got everybody on our side. look, let's stop looking at our youth as the problem. Let's look at the problem being what we've created as a community for
That's
these
Right.
youth.
right.
We've got
That's
to
right.
solve problems, right? So it's not their fault that their parents are working hard every day, but they have to,
Right.
because we don't have jobs where they are. So we got engaged, and we looked at all the data and said, and because we're data driven and we're fact based,
Yeah.
we're able
Fantastic.
to tell folks, look, it's not even just kids of color. Look at all the families that have been living out here forever, and they're poor and they're white, and no one's ever looked at what their needs are. Now we have something in common that we can join
Hmm.
Right.
together on,
Mm.
and you get the police and the gang members who used to be gang members.
Working together.
You get the gang lead, the folks who are working with gangs on the same side of that
Yes.
story. You have something opposite of Ferguson. You have something
Mm.
that's instead of a community in disarray and fractured based on the economics of a community and the policing of that city, right? You have a community that starts to build up economic sharing and mutual understanding. But see, those are the
Hmm.
kind of things that if we hadn't been open to wherever the Lord was, who was being sent to us, I mean, we really could have just said, and we even said it at some meeting. We had a brother who was honest. He said, "What's some white boy from Northern Ireland going to do to help me here in the Bay Area?" Right?
Let me say what let me say what Carla said.
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna just say what Carla said, then I'll let him go back. Excuse me. I am not white. I am Irish, and you keep that mess in the States.
Wow.
That's right. That is a U.S. construct, right? I mean, we're reminded of this all the time that those categories are U.S. based.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And unfortunately, they're shared in different parts of the world because of colonialism, right? Those ideas came out
sure.
of that. But you're right. We really do a lot of work to break down those normative beliefs, those narratives that have kind of shaped these divisions that we have. But you don't do it. I mean, we can make a speech about it. And I'm ordained. I can go make a sermon about it. But it's really about showing and working with people so they discover these things themselves. Yes, we can work.
Wow.
Yes, we have something in common, and that's just one of many initiatives we've been.
Man, what a loaded question you
Wow.
asked, Lachey.
I know. I mean, I'll just pause on this. I want to make sure it's like what's interesting. I do want to comment on what I think is there's so many fascinating things about the work that you're doing and how and the reach of it. I don't even know how you do all that you do. I think I can answer that question that I just asked myself, though. I think that what I've noticed about your process, it's so different and unique, as you've said before, is that you identify problems in the community. You understand through data what the actual problems in the community are, and then not only did you execute on programs to solve those things, but you organize the framework. I mean, it's really incredible what you've done. It's very different to have a framework because I think that would allow you to, and I don't want to speak for you, but that would allow you to tackle all the things that you're tackling, right? Because you have a framework around the work that you are doing today and tomorrow. Is that about right?
Yeah,
100%.
100%.
And that means it doesn't matter what the issue is. It's the same. The framework helps us
That's
to
right.
it identifies, and Iris really perfected this. It helps us analyze who is community around that issue.
Yes.
So when you talk about the community, that's such a vague term. Who's the community? Well, the community are all those who should be and are concerned with that issue.
That
Some who are
That's
victimized
right.
by the issue, maybe others who are causing the issue. Either way, let's bring the key people together who can then
Mhm.
solve the problem together. So it doesn't really matter what the issue is. We have things that are on our hearts that we care about, of course. Uh,
Yes.
I love arts, so we did the Arts Education Funders Collaborative. Iris is a lawyer by trade, so she's teaching political science and she's organizing the Youth Intervention Network. So it's not like it was. I think part of what we're saying too is it wasn't such a great plan on our part as a business
No, this
either.
wasn't.
It wasn't like we sat down and said, "Well, we're going to do this, and then we'll do that, and then we'll conquer that." No, it's really just taking it step by step, handling those barriers, handling those obstacles, handling those
Yes.
that come our way as they come, and not assuming that there's going to be problems that maybe don't show up.
Yeah, I
Right?
think the tie-in with corporate also is I think you've applied a very corporate um, process, right? Frameworks. It's transferable to the community. It's transferable in a corporate process. There's so many initiatives that a corporation has to tackle, right? And you need to have I'm a big framework person. I'm a big framework person. You need to have a
Yeah.
framework around that to understand how you will tackle all those things. So I think it's the tie-in is kind of perfect with the work that you do, and this is a corporate forum here that it's a applicable concept here of frameworks that you use in a corporate setting as well as the work that you're doing in the community, and it's absolutely necessary to be successful. Let me ask you something else here. Let's see. So today's topic, overcoming obstacles, pitfalls, and microaggressions, meaty topic. Let's start by sharing with us as POCs how you've overcome some of these things throughout your career.
Do you want to
You
say
start.
something?
You start.
Me too?
Mhm.
Okay. So I always have to check with the boss before I.
You're right.
Good job.
Thank you.
Smart man.
We both have had to deal as people in corporations as well as as consultants with our own business with corporations and or with people, because these microaggressions and obstacles can come from anywhere. It
Right.
just so happens that in the corporate world, you're going to have folks who have a certain way of dealing with certain things that come off as the microaggression because of how they've been taught, what they believe, and their experiences and things like that. So you're going to find those kinds of folks everywhere. Um, for me, I've had to learn it both at a university level when I was at Stanford. I've had to learn it working with IBM. I've had to learn it with a big company. I've had to learn it with small companies. And then as a consultant, I've had to deal with uh, things ranging from nonprofit organizations, which are usually pretty cool because they're already in the work. They're already trying to do certain kinds of things, but that doesn't mean they're exempt from bringing certain beliefs into the room. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then also, I've been working with a foundation. I've been asked to head up a foundation, and so I've been coordinating that as a consultant, but as the executive director, kind of a consultant to executive director of that foundation. And I'll give that example. When I first came in, there were folks who Iris would come to meetings with me, and we both would get so frustrated because it was like I would they needed to go from here to there. I won't get into all the details, but they had to go from here to there. Let's just say that. And they're having
Right.
a hard time understanding what it was going to take to go from here to there. That's why I thought they hired me. But every time I came up with something, it was like, you know, crickets, in the room. And a million questions like, do you really have the cure for cancer? I mean, it's almost like whatever I was coming up with, it had to be so impossible, or it had to be
Wow.
no one would ever know how to do that. But I did, and so I'll be honest. I had to tell her, don't come to any more meetings because it's getting us too frustrated with the process, and she wanted to choke somebody. So some examples of how to deal with microaggressions without going to jail. And, it drives you crazy.
Okay, I should have started. Go ahead.
No, you okay? You can catch up. The thing is, we as you get older, especially, I think I've seen those things and had to deal with them more because when you're younger, you do kind of say, well, I'm kind of I'm glad I'm in the room. Most of us are not in the room. I'm glad I can be there. Let me do the best I can, and I got to prove to everybody that I know what I'm doing and I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Right.
we have a lot of good humility because there's a lot of folks in generations coming up that don't have that good humility. What I mean is, 19-year-olds questioning the whole process in a company. It's like you haven't been here long enough to start, acting like you know what would be better. Learn about it a little bit first. So I think that's a good thing to learn and then speak from knowledge. But as I've gotten older, I have a lot less patience for that kind of stuff.
Right.
I know I belong in the room. I know that they needed
Yes.
in the room or I wouldn't be there, so that we don't have to go through all that game. We can get
Right.
right to let's get to the work. You hired me because I know what I'm doing. I'm also not a tyrant. I don't ever, as a consultant, we've always learned how to collaborate, work with people. So we never come in thinking we know it all or that we're going to make it happen by ourselves. So I think for me, I've learned those kinds of things have been very powerful though, because I think the more people see that you know you should be in the room, you know who you are, you know you have the skills, and you don't waste your time getting distracted
Right.
by the
Hmm.
microaggression or the,
Right.
because a lot of times people who do that kind of stuff don't have any real power themselves.
No.
So we start,
Right.
oh, I got to prove something to them. I don't have to prove anything
Yeah.
to them. And I don't have to say anything to them. I'm going to get about what I'm supposed to do. Because guess what? While they're busy conniving how to microaggression me, right? More ways to undermine me. I'm getting so much accomplished that they will
Right.
become very irrelevant because no one can.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's the other thing. If you understand what the mission is of the organization you work in,
Which is good.
the
Hmm.
purpose in that, and you help that organization achieve that, and then some, because you also bring, and you have to face these things, you have to realize how creative you are, because you can't get
Yes.
to where we get with all those obstacles without having figured out a whole lot of stuff and learn how to do things really nobody else can do. I call it the Willie Mays effect. When I was growing up, Willie Mays was one of the newest black baseball players in the major leagues after Jackie Robinson, and but Willie Mays was one of the most brilliant baseball players to ever live, and I got it. Right now, we're in a society. This was back then when you have to be 20 times better to be considered equal.
Right.
That's
It's
right. That's
in
right.
every area, including corporations and stuff. It still is in a lot of places. But I've gotten past all that now to go, well, I don't have to prove that I'm 20 times better. I know
That's
I
right.
am. But at the same time, I'm going to be there. And this is how you turn it around. I'm there to help other people get to be better.
Right.
See, that's
Right.
everybody in the company, in the community, in the organization. I'm not about trying to prove anything anymore. I know
Right.
I'm there. But now that I know I'm there, I can be a mentor. I can be a helper. I can facilitate. I can
Right.
train and teach people.
Just
Yes.
something.
Okay.
And let me jump in right there. In other words, in the words of Cool Mo D, you got the credentials, and now you are essential. You know you're essential.
You know what? No, I'm glad. You know what? I'm glad you just said. I'm glad you said do it because you know what? Just to tell you a little bit about my story before Keith and I got together and got in the when I first started doing this kind of work, I didn't have any credential. I was a high school dropout who had no place to live because of problems with my mother and getting kicked out of the house the whole bit. I didn't know one thing from another. I ended up going, make a long story short, somebody said, oh, you should go to modeling school. I'm like, okay. So I ended up going to modeling school.
She couldn't help that she was beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Anyway,
Oh.
whatever. Anyway, modeling school. So I go to modeling school and they teach you about these portfolios, this big thing that you put your photos and stuff in. Yeah, your headshots and all that in. It's like a big binder type thing. And so, I know I had a portfolio. Make a long story short, for whatever reason, and I didn't know that I didn't know anything. So I just did
Right. Right. You don't know what you don't know. Right.
and so I heard about this woman by the name of Peter Pinson, and she had this thing for women who you come in and they would find out what your ideas are and what you want to do in your life, and then they'll help you get your own business started. Well, I was thinking I wanted a business because, I was thinking I wanted to help. I wanted to be a consultant. I wanted to do all these things. And I didn't really know what that was. I just had in my mind, God just showed me you can build things, you can start things. And so I want to do it. So I heard about her and I went and they said, bring your portfolio. I didn't know what a portfolio was. So I bought my modeling portfolio and I was like, here it is. And she was like, this is in San Francisco, and I was the only person of color in there, the youngest one, the only one that didn't have graduate level degrees in the whole bit. I'm in the room. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so I was there. And so for whatever reason, that woman saw something in me. And she said,
Wow.
you know what? I got something I want you to do. You know what she did? I'm
What?
looking at a picture of it right over there now. She introduced me to the chairman of the board for Wells Fargo Bank. The
Wow.
Mission Bayview market area was crashing. And they had hired all these consultants and stuff, and nobody could fix it. She introduced me to him because she knew I was creative and she knew that I didn't have any barriers. I didn't know what wouldn't work. So why am I going to not do something because somebody said it didn't work? I don't know I just know what should work. And so she had me meet with the chairman of the board. And I was able to articulate to him a vision for transforming the Mission Bayview market area. Because to me, it just made sense. It's like, well, y'all talking about nobody banks here. Your doggone ATMs are all in England. Spanish tellers. You don't have any kind of relationship with Mission High School. It was just all this stuff that just made sense to me. And so he was like, they called Larry Zanolini in, who was the president of the bank in that for that area, and introduced him and told him, hire her. I want her to hire her to transfer the mission. And you know what? And they did. And poor Larry, we ended up being so close friends later on. But in the beginning, when he was like, what? Here's a high school dropout, and the chairman of the board is telling him to hire her to turn his market area around. Do you know that I took them from dead last to number one?
Oh, wow.
When
Wow.
when I left, they were still at number two, but then they ended up staying on the path that I was in. And number two, I've got a picture of me right there because I didn't know what I didn't. I didn't know you couldn't do stuff. So I'm over there in the big sombrero and the whole bit. And I went and got them to give me the stagecoach. And I had the stagecoach going up and down to the mission and meeting people. I hired Spanish speaking tellers, worked with a Spanish speaking radio station to promote Wells Fargo's vision, had all these young kids, gave people jobs, the whole bit. And people the community just flocked towards Wells. So, you know, it doesn't take, and I was still a dropout. But, and then later, of course, and then ended up graduating number one in law school. So God can do the miracle. But God brought Keith and I, it's clear he brought Keith and I together.
Wow.
Because we have two different approaches, two different personalities, but merged, they mesh. And I didn't have enough sense to know that I couldn't tell people what I wanted to tell them and couldn't say what I wanted to say and couldn't tell, well, no, you need to do this. I didn't know that I couldn't.
Wow.
I didn't know. So, but that was God bringing us together. And that's why it's such a miracle. And yeah, and especially that he has patience with me.
I love that. I love that. One of the comments we often hear in the workplace from POCs is that it's not an equal playing ground, right? We hear this, all the time. Not getting the proper training and support. This is the common theme. What are your thoughts on the idea that the deck is stacked against POCs? What are your kind of general thoughts around that?
What would you tell them? What would you tell our folks out there that maybe need encouragement or some kind of map?
Yeah. Can I just say one thing real fast? I'm going to answer. It's really funny because what I just said to you about me, actually, you talking about that, the POCs right before that, is actually what sparked me to say that, because my attitude is, you can't determine if I'm valuable or not. You can't determine whether people of color are valuable or not, really? And I'm not teaching people to be victims to that stupid narrative.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So it's like, but go ahead, Keith. You have more.
We definitely mesh on that. We hit it from two different angles, and I definitely agree with Iris's perspective, which is, on the one hand, one of the things I tell young folks and anybody that I work with who's having obstacles in the world, in our country and the world, is that it's true. The deck has been stacked for a long time, and another thing we have to know, it's not just been against us, and we got to get out of that. Because there's an anti-Black thing that's out there that I think is positive in the sense that we call it when that's going on, that we can call it out. But on the other hand, I think we emphasize it to the detriment of the truth, the whole truth. The whole truth is that people just didn't look at Black folks coming across the ocean and say, we're going to make you the slave. Slavery was already going on. Folks in our own continent were using Black folks as slaves. So that was going on. Now, my problem with America is that we kept slavery after we became a democracy. That's what was the problem. But the other piece of it is that we were killing this country almost to the point of genocide, Native Americans. And then we don't know the whole other story of even poor Eastern and Southern Europeans who've come in. And don't get me started on poor white people who really the whole thing of racism was designed not against us. It was designed to keep them down. Because if you can tell them they should be lucky that they're not Black and keep them in the point of being subservient with no land, working the worst jobs, working in the mines, still being the poorest group in America,
Still,
Not,
Mm.
yes.
not by proportion. There's a lot of disproportionality that puts us up there in the stats, but by numbers of people, there are still many, many, many more poor whites in prison. You can go down all the stats. Those dying from opioids and all those other things. But
And of the Eastern and Southern European culture also, which is also different also. Yeah, but I just
they became
yeah,
some poor white.
yeah.
But the point I'm making is, yes. So the deck can be stacked in a country that has a hierarchical structure of only letting a few people be at the top. If we want to change something, we all need to get together to deal with that. But at the same time, while we're working on changing our structure, the structural things that keep people down, poverty and homeless and all those kinds of things. Remember, if we want to talk about our people, let's talk about our people who had it 100,000 times worse than we've ever had it. Let's talk about that and how they dealt
Mhm.
with it. They definitely dealt with changing it. They dealt with overcoming it, and they dealt with surviving. And so that's something to be very proud of. We are survivors. We are people who are creators in the face of destruction. We're the people who actually call for community in the face of people saying you don't belong, right? We're the ones who are defending democracy most of the time still. If you look at Congress and other places, it's right. We're defending what should be happening in this country, not the way people did something wrong, but what we should be doing right. And that's my encouragement, to say, look, remember who you come from,
Yeah.
first of all. If folks have
Right.
and you can overcome. Secondly, remember you're not the only one. And when you go into a place and you let people play that game that because you're black, you're the only one who's going to
Right.
have any kind of trouble here, don't believe it. Because while they're making you think that you're the only one, they're doing the same kind of junk to average people that happen to be white as well. This whole mythology that white people have all this privilege,
Please.
let's look at the data.
Look at
They
the
do not have
facts.
it. Now, they may have it in circumstantial situations where they bring privilege to the table because they've been told they have it, right? That's those microaggressions. It's like, oh, I get to tell you that you shouldn't be walking your dog on my street, or I get to tell you you shouldn't be in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Well, it's neighborhood, we're in the same.
And look at
Right?
the
You're not coming to the rich part of town with a Karen coming after you.
yes.
You're in a poor or middle part of town with
Yes.
somebody feeling like the only privilege they have is their skin. And that's very sad, because the reality is nobody has any privilege because of their skin.
No.
People have privilege because they have been inheriting it for the last 200 years, mostly. And they have a lot of resources and access and ownership that gets passed down. And yeah, there's a few people who can sneak in.
Right.
Right, but a few of us sneak in. I mean, what about Oprah and all the ball players and stuff who are
Right.
multi-billionaires now?
Mhm.
We're in North Carolina. Michael Jordan owns a lot of this place now.
Yeah. I
But,
think what's interesting about what you're saying is, and I want to make sure that I come in with what I understand about what you said. So I think there's a certain passivity and laziness that comes with the label of stacking the deck, right? So I think that if I get you correctly, that I think that there's a certain amount of passivity that goes along with saying those things for some people. It's easy to say that, oh well, the deck is stacked against me, so that's it. I don't have to do anything. But what I also want to put forward is that what lives alongside of that for me is the idea that there is an infrastructure that is in place for non-Black people or non-POCs. That is something that has to coexist with this idea of passivity as it relates to stacking the deck against POCs, persons of color. There is an infrastructure that is in place that's been here for hundreds of years to support non-POCs. We need to understand that. It doesn't set you back. It doesn't make you stop what you reach for, but you have to acknowledge that that does exist. And that acknowledgement allows us to build, the framework that you're building for our own communities, because you know that there's a lack of infrastructure that's in place for us, right?
But I also want you to see some other things, think about some other things factually also. And I can send you some stuff because what you're saying, I'm with you. I hear you. But what we don't also pay attention to is there has always also been lack of infrastructure, but also the building of barriers for people that we now call white. See, now we got this white thing, and this whole concept of stereotype threat. Dr. Clark still came up with this whole stereotype threat. where you can be a poor white person with nothing to eat, living on a doggone street corner in the whole bit, but you'll still call somebody the N-word because you're told, well, at least you ain't one of them. Now, I can be walking around making a couple $100,000 a year, but they're told to keep them passive and to keep them from rising up. Well, what about us? What about our turn? And see, that's one thing. That's why Colin got mad when I called him white when he was here, because everybody else knows our history but us. Don't you ever call me white. I am Irish. I am not white. Nobody on the planet calls themselves, they are what they are, Irish or Northern Irish or this. You go to these other places, and I'm going to tell you something. I had a young brother who was in and out of the penitentiary and stuff all the time, getting in trouble and the whole bit. So I'm learning the whole bit. When he first learned that, because we set him up so that he'd get checked behind that, victimology thing. That young brother broke down in tears when he realized that by his own people, with good intent we do, taught him that he will never be able to do what they can do because the barriers for him are much more significant than the barriers for them. And I'm going to tell you something. People don't understand, and poor whites have bought into it. See, this whole thing of whiteness is game. And people get played because there are people out there that are so-called white, don't have nearly what you do or I do or could ever be who we are and what we are. And you go to other countries that people call white countries because we're so ignorant here, we don't learn about things. You go and you got people in government in places that we call white countries. You go to doggone Northern Ireland and you look at them different brothers and sisters and stuff like that from America or from Africa that England have gone and have and are running certain things there, or in government or in education and the whole bit. See, we have to be very, very careful to understand that it is powerful. Making people think that they are less than and making people think that they have barriers that they cannot breach and making people think that people have the power to their lives is a powerful weapon that they have. And
That's right.
many of us give it to them.
Well,
That's right.
Let me share what I think. And again,
because I'm agreeing with her. I hear
no, I know. That's what I'm saying. Let me put out what I think.
We're saying the same thing, I believe.
Saying the same thing, exactly. And in fact, I agree about the barriers. I think that's where we come in because I think what I would tell someone is be fact-based, though. Be fact-based.
Of course.
Because if we groupize everything, that doesn't allow for individual creativity and innovation and even acknowledgement. Because it becomes part of the political game of America to get these different groupings going on. And it is. It can become a barrier. Just by even putting it as a barrier can become a barrier that it doesn't need to be. But I'm saying be fact-based because what you said is right. When we analyze certain things in our society, there are structural barriers to democracy. There are meaning gerrymandering and some of the compromises that were in the Constitution. I mean, we can go through a whole bunch of stuff that has led to a lot of problems. So I think the people who have been our greatest leaders and change makers have been fact-based. They've looked at what things do we need to change. And in other cases, they've also been the same people, though, who said, but you also need to get your butt out of bed and go to work, right? They've told their
back to that not being passive thing.
That's right. You're right. There's different groupings that occur. But if we're fact-based, then together we can work together on what needs to change to make the barriers removed. Because I'll tell you what, Oprah and Michael and all the other folks who are multimillionaires hasn't changed the economic structure of our society. So we can celebrate them, but that doesn't mean we've changed what we need to change. Just like when Martin Luther King and others got rid of the political structures that were creating Jim Crow, and he knew that the next step had to be economic democracy. And I believe that's when he was killed. Malcolm in the same. When Malcolm stopped talking about the blue-eyed devil, because that's a mythology, and start talking about the worldwide imperialism, then you're really seriously challenging the realities.
Yeah.
And so I'm
Right.
with you. I think we have to encourage our folks to overcome barriers.
Yes.
Don't let those barriers
Yes.
become our coat. Take the coat
Yes.
off,
Take
take
it
the
off.
jacket off. But
Right.
but also help us get to that next. See, I think the thing I always saw in college, I was a BSU president, co-president, and one of the things I started learning was this: we focus so much on just um, one level. Uh, like if you only shoot for the top of the building instead of shooting for the stars,
Hmm.
right? So if we're focusing just on proving to folks we're equal and we have a history and that there were black kings and queens and all of that kind of stuff, we're we're not really doing it. The level we want to be at is getting to a place where I'm confident about me
That's
and
right. That's
confident
right.
about you,
You.
meaning that I'm working now not just to better me or to prove myself or to move up the corporate ladder, but I'm using everything that God gives me, whatever, even if it's still a lowly position or a big position, whatever it is, I'm going to bring a whole bunch of folks along with me to at least educate them about what's going on. And I think
Hmm.
the more we turn our attention to others, meaning not
Right.
just me, but our community. And again, not about trying to prove to our community that we don't have anything, but prove to our community what we can do if
Who
we
we
work
are.
together and who we are.
Who we
Then we
are.
can grapple with these real things that still need to change.
You know, so
Absolutely.
Ooh, I got
Tangiel.
something to say. I got something to say.
Yeah, jump in, jump in.
I know. Just real quick, I just want to say two things. One, with that same attitude, I learned this from my mother, who has a 12th grade education, and that is, yes, there's going to be obstacles. In life, there are obstacles. So let's not focus on the obstacle. Let's focus on what you're going to do to get over it, to get around it, because that's what matters.
yes.
And then she'd take it to the Bible and say, "So a man thinketh, so is he." Right? So, so it's all about you and what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate all that feedback. And both of your perspectives are really good. And this is exactly what people need to hear because, you know, in the work that Lachez and I do, we are talking to all different types of people every day who are trying to get their foot in the door.
Yes.
And if we're talking to a person of color, if they don't get the interview, if they don't get the job, immediately, some, not all, will go there and say, it's because of this, it's because of that. And, you know, we take that opportunity when we can to try and educate, coach, and help them and redirect them so that they're set up for their next, you know, their next job. So,
That's
Yes.
why nobody has to try to defeat us if we continue to, if we decide we're going to wear the victim cap. We're going to,
right,
you don't even have to put it on my head.
right.
I'm just going to wear it. And so I'm never going to be, and it's just because we're just, I don't know. It's so funny too, because you go other places. Like I said, you go other places, even, you know, black folk in other places that have immigrated to other countries and stuff like that and the whole bit. It's like, they don't want to hear that mess. It's like, I'll do what I want to do. You know what? I used to give credit. I used to think that Malcolm X said this. I don't know how I mixed it up. It was actually Keith said it to me. As Malcolm X said, but now I know it was Keith said, look, I go where I want to go. The dude, I go. You know what I'm saying? What's the exact?
Well, I don't know. I've just said I'm owning it. I'm an American. All
I
right.
go where I want to
I'm
go. That's
not.
right.
I'm
I
not
do what
saying
I
I'm
want
an
to do.
American because I'm like proud of the history. I just know I was born here, and according to the
Right. You're a citizen. Right.
citizen, therefore
Right.
I'm not bound by somebody else's idea of what I
Yeah.
can or cannot do. There,
That's right.
I'm not going to get. I've been hit by it. Believe me,
Oh
I
yeah.
get hit by
Oh
it
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Being a black male in the kinds of work that we do, when people will, they don't even have to say it. You can tell. They're like, you don't belong here. We're going to do everything we can to undermine you. And I'm a little bit more like I think Muhammad or Ali or somebody like that when that happens. See, I don't get to fight in the ring.
Yes.
I can do rope a dope, anywhere I am, and that I can come out swinging. And because the point of it is that I know we're victorious. I know that we can do it. I don't.
Mm.
I'm not arrogant either because I've had failures in my life. I had things that really have come against could have destroyed me. But there again, knowing who I am, knowing that I'm of God, that God loves me, He loves all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm not
Yes.
asking anybody anything that That's actually the good news. I'm supposed to tell you all that God loves everybody, right? That's the good news. The good news is not if you do this or do that, you're going to get to heaven. It's God loves you. That's all. It's very simple. And so if we know that, you don't have to ever worry about anything.
No.
It doesn't mean we don't have problems. It just means we can overcome it if we work together.
And what I wish would stop happening, and I've always told Keith this, I wish sisters and brothers would stop doggone attacking sisters and brothers. Don't tell me about what somebody else is doing when it just
Right.
it's so. And you know, all my life, that's been my biggest battle. Other sisters and brothers tripping. Really,
Yes.
I've had to confront it. So you know what? It's like when people tell me, I don't even want to hear it. We got to get our stuff together on the inside and start supporting one another and stop attacking one another. Then we can talk about what other people do. We know all that history. Let's stop pretending though like we're just all one. No, we're not.
I think a lot of things that you both have said are really important. I mean, first of all, we have to read. There has to be, like you said, back to that fact-based data, vet sources, right? Like the fake news, stay away from these things.
Yes.
Understand your history, understand that we come from a great people. So know that as you go through always, right? And then do, right? There's learning, doing, reading, and then do.
Yes.
Overcome the obstacles, do what you need to do. You don't have to worry about what an oppressor has to say about you. They do what they do. They say what they say. You worry about what you do. And that's it, right? And you read and understand who you are when you do it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
We have covered everything. I think we had more questions, but you guys kind of answered all.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think we really tackled the microaggression topic here, and I think that's what we were setting out to do, and understanding how to tackle that and how to address that in the workplace. And I think we did that through this fantastic discussion. I think so, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to add, though, you guys spend the majority of your time doing work in the community, opposed to what Lachez and I know as corporate. It starts there, right? So to me, those that are listening, you need to hear this because it all starts at home, right? It starts at home and in your community. And once you learn how to deal with pitfalls and obstacles and microaggressions in your community and in your home, then going to work is a piece of cake.
Yes.
Piece of cake.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to face microaggression in corporate, right? Absolutely. And so it's the same principles that apply to the community that they apply to corporate life. And it's the same
Yes.
things we talked about here. You have to know who you are. You have to always read, whether it's for the community or corporate. You have to read, understand who you are, and then hold your head up as you do this work, right? Know who you are, know what you can do, know your abilities. Like Keith said, if you know your work, there's nothing else someone else can tell you. That no one can take your efforts and your work away from you, right?
Belongs to you.
So,
The only thing
especially since it's trademarked.
Definitely not taking it away from either of you.
So, Lachey,
Kudos.
don't we want to ask you guys if anybody wants to reach out to you and gain more information on the company, on yourselves, and how they can, maybe connect and do work with you. How do they do that?
Yes.
our website, emeraldhpc.com. And you can reach Iris or I through the website. Our email is there, and we'd love to hear from folks. And also maybe even hear from folks who'd love to learn more about some of the stuff we do or the things we teach or train in, because we're going to be doing more online trainings over the next year or two.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but our contact information is right there, and we welcome anybody that'd like to contact us and have conversations and stuff. That's fine. Yeah, emeraldhpc.com.
Awesome. Well, with that said, people, remember to stay tuned for more episodes of Your Corporate IQ podcast. We're interested in hearing from you. Oh, I know you guys are going to have comments about this session. This was a good one. We walked away with some good pearls and perils, did we not?
We did.
So, yeah, please send us your comments to info@yourcorporateiq.com and like us and engage with us on Your Corporate IQ, LinkedIn, as well as Instagram. Until next time, stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
High, low, close or open toe. You be looking good when you rock 'em, so put your heels on, girl. Them heels on, lady. Hit your ground hard, you drive me crazy. Palms get sweaty, I'm imagining things. When I see what reality brings, I get choked from your vision of comparable. So dumb, man, I could write a parable. Killing when I go back to my rap hole living. Michelangelo, you on the ceiling.